Jimmy Savile. Sir James Wilson Vincent Savile, OBE, KCSG, the 31st of October 1926, the 29th of October 2011, was an English disc jockey, television presenter, media personality and charity fundraiser. He hosted the BBC television show Jim'll Fix It, was the first and last presenter of the long-running BBC music chart show Top of the Pops, and raised an estimated £40 million for charities. After his death, hundreds of allegations of child sex abuse and rape became public, leading the police to describe Savile as one of Britain's most prolific sex offenders. Savile was conscripted to work in the coal mines as a bivin boy during the Second World War. He began a career playing records in, and later managing, dance halls. His media career started as a disc jockey at Radio Luxembourg in 1958 and on Time Tees Television in 1960, and he developed a reputation for eccentricity and his flamboyant character. At the BBC, he presented the first edition of Top of the Pops in 1964 and broadcast on BBC Radio 1 from 1968. Between 1975 and 1994 he presented Jim'll Fix It, a popular television program in which he arranged for the wishes of viewers, mainly children, to come true. During his lifetime, he was noted for fundraising and supporting charities and hospitals, in particular Stoke Mandeville Hospital near Aylesbury, Leeds General Infirmary and Broadmoor Hospital in Berkshire. He was described in The Guardian as a prodigious philanthropist and was honored for his charity work. He was awarded the OBE in 1971 and was knighted in 1990. In October 2012, almost a year after his death, an ITV documentary examining claims of sexual abuse against Savile led to broad media coverage and a substantial and rapidly growing body of witness statements and sexual abuse claims, including accusations against public bodies for covering up or failure of duty. Scotland Yard launched a criminal investigation into allegations of child sex abuse by Savile over 6 decades, describing him as a predatory sex offender, and later stated that they were pursuing over 400 lines of inquiry based on the testimony of 300 potential victims via 14 police forces across the UK. By late October 2012, the scandal had resulted in inquiries or reviews at the BBC, within the National Health Service, the Crown Prosecution Service, and the Department of Health. Early life Savile, born in Leeds, was the youngest of 7 children. His elder siblings were Mary, Marjorie, Vincent, John, Joan, and Christina in a Roman Catholic family. His parents were Agnes Monica, née Kelly, and Vincent Joseph Marie Savile, a bookmaker's clerk and insurance agent. He almost died of pneumonia at the age of 5 months. During the Second World War he was conscripted to work as a bivin boy, at South Kirkby Colliery in West Yorkshire, where he suffered serious spinal injuries in an explosion and spent a long period recuperating. Having started playing records in dance halls in the early 1940s, Savile claimed to be the first disc jockey. According to his autobiography, he was the first person to use 2 turntables and a microphone at the Grand Records Ball at the Guardbridge Hotel in 1947. It was billed as Jimmy Savile introducing jukebox doubles. Savile is acknowledged as a pioneer of using twin turntables for continuous music playing. 18. Although his claim to have been the first is disputed, twin turntables were illustrated in the BBC Handbook in 1929 and advertised for sale in Gramophone magazine in 1931. He became a semi-professional sportsman, competing in the 1951 Tour of Britain Cycle Race 20 and working as a professional wrestler. He said, "If you look at the athletics of it, I've done over 300 professional bike races, 212 marathons and 107 pro fights. He proudly announces that he lost all of his first 35 fights. No wrestler wanted to go back home and say a long-haired disc jockey had put him down. So from start to finish I got a good hiding. I've broken every bone in my body. I loved it. Savile lived in Salford, and managed a Plaza Ballroom on Oxford Road, Manchester, in the mid-50s. When he lived in Great Close Street in Higher Broughton, Salford, he was often seen sitting on his front door steps. He managed the Mecca Locarno Ballroom in Leeds in the late 1950s and early 1960s and managed the Mecca-owned The Palace Dance Hall in Ilford, Essex between 1955 and 1956. His Monday evening records-only dance sessions, admission 1 shilling, were popular with local teens. Radio Savile's radio career began as a DJ at Radio Luxembourg from 1958 to 1967. He ran the Teen and 20 Disc Club, TTDC, membership for life, on Radio Luxembourg. For small fee listeners received a certificate and bracelet with the disc inscribed with the show's name. On the BBC television series Inside Out, he said the title Teen and 20 Disc Club had been rejected as too long in favor of Top of the Pops, and he had introduced dancing to records, and was the originator of the discotheque. In 1968 he joined BBC Radio 1, where he presented Savile's Travels, a weekly program broadcast on Sundays in which he traveled around the UK talking to members of the public. From 1969 to 1973 he fronted Speakeasy, a discussion program for teenagers. On Radio 1 he presented the Sunday lunchtime show Jimmy Savile's Old Record Club, playing top tens from years gone by. It was the first show to feature old charts, and Savile used a points system in an imaginary quiz with the audience to guess the names of the song and artist. It began in 1973 as the Double Top 10 show, and ended in 1987 as the Triple Top 10 show when he left Radio 1 after 19 years. He presented the Vintage Chart Show, playing top tens from 1957 to 1987. On BBC World Service from March 1987 until October 1989. From March 1989 to August 1997 he broadcast on various stations around the UK, mostly taking the gold format, such as the West Midlands Straw AM and the Classic Gold Network in Yorkshire, where he revived his Radio 1 shows. In 1994, satirist Chris Morris gave a fake obituary on BBC Radio 1, as a joke, saying that Savile had collapsed and died, which allegedly drew threats of legal action from Savile and forced an apology from Morris. On the 25th of December 2005, and the 1st of January 2007, he presented shows on the Real Radio Network. The Christmas 2005 show counted down the festive top tens of 10, 20 and 30 years previously, while the New Year 2007 show, also taken by Century Radio following its acquisition by GMG, featured Savile recounting anecdotes from his past and playing associated records, mostly from the 1960s and some from the 1970s. Television in 1960, Savile presented Tyne T's television's music program Young at Heart. Although the show was broadcast in black and white, Savile dyed his hair a different color every week. Jimmy Savile presenting Top of the Pops in 1964 on New Year's Day, 1964, he presented the first edition of the BBC Music Chart television program Top of the Pops from a television studio located inside a converted church in Dickinson Road, Rusholme, Manchester. On the 30th of July 2006, he co-hosted the final edition, ending it with the words, "It's number one, it's still Top of the Pops," before turning off the studio lights after the closing credits. When interviewed by the BBC on the 20th of November 2008 and asked about the revival of Top of the Pops for a Christmas comeback, he said he would welcome a cameo role in the program. During the early 1960s, he co-hosted, with Pete Murray, the New Musical Express Poll Winners concert, held annually at the Empire Pool in Wembley, with acts such as the Beatles, Cliff Richard and the Shadows, Joe Brown and the Brothers, The Who, and many others. The concerts were broadcast on television. On the 31st of December 1969, Savile hosted the BBC's EDF co-production Pop Go the 60s, shown across Western Europe, celebrating the hits of the 1960s. Savile presented a series of public information films promoting road safety, notably, Clunk Click Every Trip, which promoted the use of seatbelts, the clunk representing the sound of the door and the click the sound of the seatbelt fastening. It led to Savile hosting a Saturday night chat variety show from 1973 on BBC One entitled Clunk Click, which in 1974 featured the UK heats for the Eurovision Song Contest featuring Olivia Newton-John. He fronted a long-running series of advertisements for British Rail's Intercity 125, in which he declared, "This is the age of the train," in the early 1980s. After two series, Clunk Click was replaced by Jim'll Fix It, which he presented from 1975 to 1994. In 1999 he appeared as a panelist in Have I Got News For You? He was interviewed by Dr. Anthony Clare for the radio series In the Psychiatrist's Chair in 1991, in which Savile appeared to be a man without feelings. In 1995 he was interviewed by Andrew Neil for the TV series Is This Your Life?, made by Open Media for Channel 4. In April 2000, he was the subject of an in-depth documentary by Louis Theroux, in the When Louis Met series. In each program Theroux accompanied a British celebrity going about their day-to-day business, and interviewed them about their lives and experiences. In the documentary, Savile seemed distrustful and reluctant to reveal much about himself, although he did confide on camera that he used to beat people up and lock them in the basement during his career as a nightclub manager. When Louis Met Jimmy was voted one of the top 50 documentaries of all time in his survey by Britain's Channel 4. Savile visited the celebrity Big Brother house on 14 and the 15th of January 2006 and fixed it for some housemates to have their wishes granted. Pete Burns received a message from his significant other and friend while Dennis Rodman traded Savile's offering for a supply of cigarettes for the other housemates. In 2007, Savile returned to television with Jim'll Fix It Strikes Again, showing some of the most popular Fix-Its, recreating them with the same people, and making new dreams come true. Fundraising, sponsorship and voluntary work. Savile's funeral cortege passing Leeds General Infirmary. Savile is estimated to have raised £40 million for charity. One cause for which he raised money was Stoke Mandeville Hospital, where he volunteered for many years as a porter. He raised money for the Spinal Unit, NSIC, National Spinal Injuries Center, and St. Francis Ward, a ward for children and teens with spinal cord injuries. Savile also volunteered at Leeds General Infirmary and Broadmoor Hospital. In August 1988, he was appointed by Junior Health Minister Edwin Currie chair of an interim task force overseeing the management of Broadmoor Hospital, after its board members had been suspended. Savile had his own room at both Stoke Mandeville and Broadmoor. In 2012, it was reported that Savile sexually abused vulnerable patients at these hospitals. It was also reported that the civil servant who proposed Savile's appointment at Broadmoor was later investigated by police and stopped from working with children. From 1974 to 1988, Savile was the honorary president of FAB, physically handicapped and the able-bodied community. He sponsored medical students performing undergraduate research in the Leeds University Research Enterprise Scholarship Scheme, donating more than £60,000 every year. In 2010, the scheme was given a commitment of £500,000 over the following 5 years. Following Savile's death in October 2011, it was confirmed a big request had been made to allow continued support for the program. Savile was well known for running marathons, many for FAB, including its annual half-marathon around Hyde Park. Although it was reported that he completed the London Marathon at the age of 79, he was driven round in a lead vehicle as an observer. Personal life. Savile. At the 1982 Leeds Marathon, Savile was famous for his yodel, and his catchphrases included, "How's about that, then? Now then, now then, now then, goodness gracious, as it happens," and "Guys and gals." Savile was frequently spoofed for his distinctive appearance, which usually featured a tracksuit or shell suit and gold jewelry. A range of licensed fancy dress costumes was released with his consent in 2009. Savile was a cigar smoker who usually smoked very expensive Cuban brands. He was a member of the Institute of Advanced Motorists and drove a Rolls-Royce. He was a member of Mensa. He was made a life member of the British Gypsy Council in 1975, becoming the first outsider to be made a member. He was chieftain of the Lochaber Highland Games for many years, and owned a house in Glencoe. His appearance on the final edition of Top of the Pops in 2006 was pre-recorded as it clashed with the games. Through his support of hospital charities, Savile became a friend of Margaret Thatcher, who in 1981 described his work as marvelous. He reportedly spent 11 consecutive New Year's Eves at Chequers with Thatcher and her family. In 1984, he was accepted into membership of the Athenaeum Club, a prestigious gentlemen's club in Pall Mall, London, after being proposed for membership by Cardinal Basil Hume. He met Prince Charles through mutual charity interests, and Charles reportedly sent him gifts on his 80th birthday and a note reading, "Nobody will ever know what you have done for this country, Jimmy. This is to go some way in thanking you for that." A lifelong bachelor, Savile lived with his mother, whom he referred to as the Duchess, and kept her bedroom and wardrobe exactly as it was when she died. Every year he had her clothes dry cleaned. Savile's personal relationships were rarely the subject of media report or comment during his lifetime. He claimed in his autobiography that he had had many intimate relations with members of the opposite sex, describing his first introduction to women in detail and adding that, "There have been trains and, with apologies to the hit parade, boats and planes, I am a member of the 40,000-foot club, and bushes and fields, corridors, doorways, floors, chairs, slag heaps, desks and probably everything except the celebrated chandelier and ironing board." In 1989, Savile started legal proceedings against News Group newspapers after the News of the World published an article in January 1988 suggesting Savile had been in a position to secure the release of patients from the Broadmoor Hospital who were considered dangerous. Savile won on the 11th of July 1989, and News Group paid all legal costs, and he received an apology from editors Kelvin Mackenzie and Patsy Chapman. On the 9th of August 1997, Savile underwent a 3-hour quadruple heart bypass operation at Killingbeck Hospital in Leeds, having known he needed the surgery for at least 4 years after attending regular checkups. Before his death, he arranged for a bench in Scarborough, North Yorkshire, to be dedicated to his memory, with the words, "Jimmy Savile, but not just yet," as an inscription. Death. Savile's coffin on display at the Queen's Hotel in Leeds, The 8th of November 2011, Savile was found dead at his home in Roundhay, Leeds. On the 29th of October 2011, 2 days before his 85th birthday. He had been in hospital with pneumonia, and his death was not suspicious. His closed satin gold coffin was displayed at the Queen's Hotel in Leeds, with the last cigar he smoked and his two "This Is Your Life" books. Around 4,000 people visited to pay tribute. His funeral took place at Leeds Cathedral on the 9th of November 2011, and he was buried at Woodlands Cemetery in Scarborough. As specified in his will, his coffin was inclined at 45 degrees to fulfill his wish to see the sea. The coffin was encased in concrete, as a security measure. An auction of Savile's possessions was conducted at the Royal Armouries Museum, Leeds on the 30th of July 2012, with the money raised going to charity. His silver Rolls-Royce Corniche convertible was sold for £130,000 to an internet bidder. The vehicle's number plate, JS247, featured the original medium-wave wavelength used by BBC Radio 1, 247 meters. Allegations of sexual abuse. Main article, Jimmy Savile sexual abuse scandal during his lifetime. During Savile's lifetime, sporadic allegations of child abuse were made against him, but only became widely publicized after his death. Savile claimed the key to his success on Jimmy Fix It had been that he disliked children, although he later admitted to saying this to deflect scrutiny of his personal life. He did not own a computer as he did not want anybody to think he was downloading child pornography. In April 2000, in a documentary by Louis Theroux, when Louis met Jimmy Savile, Savile acknowledged salacious tabloid people had raised rumors about whether he was a pedophile, and said, "I know I'm not." In 2007, Savile was interviewed under caution by police investigating an allegation of indecent assault in the 1970s at the now-closed Duncroft-approved school for girls near Staines, Surrey, where he was a regular visitor. The Crown Prosecution Service advised there was insufficient evidence to take any further action and no charges were brought. In March 2008, Savile started legal proceedings against the Sun newspaper, which had linked him in several articles to child abuse at the Jersey children's home Haut de la Garenne. Savile denied visiting Haut de la Garenne, but later admitted that he had following the publication of a photograph showing him at the home surrounded by children. The States of Jersey police said that in 2008 an allegation of an indecent assault by Savile at the home in the 1970s had been investigated, but there had been insufficient evidence to proceed. In 2009, Savile publicly defended the convicted pedophile pop star, Gary Glitter, saying, he just watched the few dodgy films and was only vilified because he was a celebrity. It were for his own gratification. Whether it was right or wrong is up to him as a person. But they didn't do anything wrong. In 2012, Sir Roger Jones, former BBC Governor for Wales and chairman of BBC charity Children in Need, disclosed that more than a decade before Savile's death he had banned Savile from involvement in the charity, because he felt Savile's behavior was strange and suspicious, and had heard unsubstantiated rumors about his activities. Former royal family press secretary, Dickie Arbiter said Savile's behavior had raised concern and suspicion when Savile acted as an informal marriage counselor between Prince Charles and Princess Diana in the late 1980s, although no reports had been made. After his death on the 28th of September 2012, almost a year after Savile's death, ITV1 said it would broadcast a documentary, Exposure, The Other Side of Jimmy Savile, with claims by up to 10 women, including one aged under 14 at the time, that they had been sexually molested or raped by him during the 1960s and 1970s. The announcement attracted national media attention, and more reports and claims of abuse against him accumulated. The documentary was broadcast on the 3rd of October 2012. The following day, the Metropolitan Police said the Child Abuse Investigation Command would assess the allegations. By the 19th of October 2012, police were pursuing 400 lines of inquiry based on testimony from 200 witnesses via 14 police forces across the UK. They described the alleged abuse as on an unprecedented scale, and the number of potential victims as staggering. Investigations were opened by the Metropolitan Police to identify criminal conduct related to Savile's activities, and by the Crown Prosecution Service into why a prosecution had been dropped as unlikely to succeed in 2009. By the 25th of October, police reported the number of possible victims was approaching 300. The developing scandal led to inquiries into practices at the BBC, and within the National Health Service. It was alleged that rumors of Savile's activities had circulated at the BBC in the 1960s and 1970s, but no action had been taken. Savile was trusted with keys and unsupervised access to patients including the mentally and physically disabled at some hospitals. The Director General of the BBC, George Entwistle, apologized for what had happened, and on the 16th of October 2012 appointed former High Court Judge Dame Janet Smith to review the culture and practices of the BBC during the time Savile worked there, and Nick Pollard, a former Sky News executive, was appointed to look at why a Newsnight investigation into Savile's activities was dropped shortly before transmission in December 2011. On the 22nd of October, BBC flagship program, Panorama, broadcast its investigation into Newsnight and found evidence suggesting senior manager pressure. On the same day, Newsnight editor Peter Rippon stepped down with immediate effect. The Department of Health appointed former barrister Kate Lampert to chair and oversee the department's investigations into Savile's activities at Stoke Mandeville Hospital, Leeds General Infirmary, Broadmoor Hospital and other hospitals and facilities in England. Savile's ornate black granite and steel headstone stood for just 19 days after it was unveiled on the 20th of September 2012. Aftermath: within a month of the child abuse scandal breaking, many places and organizations named after or connected to Savile were renamed or removed. A memorial plaque on the wall of Savile's former home in Scarborough was removed in early October 2012 after it was defaced with graffiti, and a wooden statue of Savile at Scotstoun Leisure Centre in Glasgow was removed around the same time. A sign on a footpath in Scarborough bearing Savile's surname was removed. Savile's Hall, the conference centre at the Royal Armouries Museum in Leeds, was renamed New Dock Hall. 2 registered charities founded in his name to fight poverty and sickness and other charitable purposes announced they were too closely tied to his name to be sustainable, and would therefore close and distribute their funds to other charities, to avoid harm to beneficiaries from possible future media attention. On the 9th of October 2012, after a police press conference, relatives stated that the headstone of Savile's grave would be removed, destroyed and sent to landfill. The family expressed their sorrow for the anguish of the victims and respect for public opinion, and in a statement by a nephew said that, "We recognize that even our own despair and sadness does not compare to that felt by the victims. How could the person we thought we knew and loved do such a thing? Our thoughts and our prayers are with those who have suffered from every kind of abuse over so many years, and we offer our deepest sympathy in what must have been a terrible time for all of them. We can understand their reluctance to say anything earlier and can appreciate the courage it has taken to speak out now. Leeds was the youngest of 7 children. His elder siblings were Mary, Marjorie, Vincent, John, Joan, and Christina in a Roman Catholic family. His parents were Agnes Monica, née Kelly, and Vincent Joseph Marie Savile, a bookmaker's clerk and insurance agent. He almost died of pneumonia at the age of 5 months. During the Second World War, he was conscripted to work as a Bevan boy at South Kirkby Colliery in West Yorkshire, where he suffered serious spinal injuries in an explosion and spent a long period recuperating. Having started playing records in dance halls in the early 1940s, Savile claimed to be the first disc jockey. According to his autobiography, he was the first person to use 2 turntables and a microphone at the Grand Records Ball at the Guardbridge Hotel in 1947. It was billed as Jimmy Savile introducing Jukebox Double Jimmy Savile. Sir James Wilson Vincent Savile, OBE, KCSG, the 31st of October 1926, the 29th of October 2011, was an English disc jockey, television presenter, media personality and charity fundraiser. He hosted the BBC television show Jim'll Fix It, was the first and last presenter of the long-running BBC music chart show Top of the Pops, and raised an estimated £40 million for charities. After his death, hundreds of allegations of child sex abuse and rape became public, leading the police to describe Savile as one of Britain's most prolific sex offenders. Savile was conscripted to work in the coal mines as a Bevan boy during the Second World War. He began a career playing records in, and later managing, dance halls. His media career started as a disc jockey in October 2012, almost a year after his death. An ITV documentary examining claims of sexual abuse against Savile led to broad media coverage and a substantial and rapidly growing body of witness statements and sexual abuse claims, including accusations against public bodies for covering up or failure of duty. Scotland Yard launched a criminal investigation into allegations of child sex abuse by Savile over 6 decades, describing him as a predatory sex offender, and later stated that they were pursuing over 400 lines of inquiry based on the testimony of 300 potential victims via 14 police forces across the UK. By late October 2012, the scandal had resulted in inquiries or reviews at the BBC, within the National Health Service, the Crown Prosecution Service, and the Department of Health. Early life: Savile, born and at Radio Luxembourg in 1958 and on Tyne Tees television in 1960, and he developed a reputation for eccentricity and his flamboyant character. At the BBC, he presented the first edition of Top of the Pops in 1964 and broadcast on BBC Radio 1 from 1968. Between 1975 and 1994, he presented Jim'll Fix It, a popular television program in which he arranged for the wishes of viewers, mainly children, to come true. During his lifetime, he was noted for fundraising and supporting charities and hospitals, in particular Stoke Mandeville Hospital near Aylesbury, Leeds General Infirmary and Broadmoor Hospital in Berkshire. He was described in The Guardian as a prodigious philanthropist and was honored for his charity work. He was awarded the OBE in 1971 and was knighted in 1990. In octals, Savile is acknowledged as a pioneer of using twin turntables for continuous music playing, 18, although his claim to have been the first is disputed. when turntables were illustrated in the BBC Handbook in 1929 and advertised for sale in Gramophone magazine in 1931. He became a semi-professional sportsman, competing in the 1951 Tour of Britain cycle race 20 and working as a professional wrestler. He said, "If you look at the athletics of it, I've done over 300 professional bike races, 212 marathons and 107 pro fights." He proudly announces that he lost all of his first 35 fights. No wrestler wanted to go back home and say a long-haired disc jockey had put him down. "So from start to finish I got a good hiding. I've broken every bone in my body. I loved it." Savile lived in